Hey everybody, good morning. Well, it is, get some light. Ooh, yeah, get some light going. It is Friday. Happy Friday to you guys. And I am coming on. I had a gal ask me a question, Mary from Sonati, and she does my vest. And she asked me a very poignant question this morning online on my Facebook, I believe. Yeah, and she asked me, she said, can someone suffer from DDS, which is drunk drive syndrome, if they've never been an alcoholic? And that really, really made me think. It actually made me really want to investigate a little bit more into what maybe being a dry drunk is and what can cause these symptoms or this disorder, right? So a lot of times when we look at these things, it's pretty complex. There are complex conditions, and we may contribute to these things. What may contribute to these things are mainly genetics, behavior, environment, and emotional or psychological issues. More so, like co-occurring mental health conditions that people that people are using alcohol to cover up, right, or to manage the symptoms of a mental health condition. So we may drink or use drugs excessively to suppress the anxiety, to cope with the stress, to counteract the depression, the anxiety. And when we stop drinking or using, right, because you could be a dry drunk or a dry user, right? We'll just do that right off the top. But we discover that our mental health challenges are probably still occurring, right, even when we stop. So that can be a little bit of a frustrating point to somebody who's in recovery, because you just got done doing all the things that you thought would help, like stopping using drugs or alcohol, and your life hasn't gotten better. So that's when we start to look externally at some of the things that are happening just in our peripheral, and then we'll get back to the internal. So the lack of support may be a pretty good reason why somebody is experiencing the dry drunk disorder, or somebody that isn't participating in counseling or therapy or meetings or that sort of thing. So you just get out, a lot of people think that I quit using or drinking, so therefore I'm going to get better. But honestly, it's a process, you guys, and it can be a lot of hard work too. So we got to start, and we got to do our due diligence, and we got to start with the attitude of wanting to get this figured out. And so some of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about today was, how do we understand what's a better understanding of a dry drunk? Okay, so basically, a dry drunk is somebody who has stopped all the things that were, detrimental to their life and stuff. But some of the psychological, emotional, and behavioral patterns that maybe fueled our addiction to the drink or drugs are still there. They're still present. We may be resentful, irritable, manipulative. We'll blame others. We'll feel stuck in our old patterns. Essentially, being a dry drunk is being sober but not practicing a program of recovery. So recovery from the people, places, and things like drugs and alcohol that got us to where we are today. And if we're practicing healthy sobriety, as we call it, right? Healthy sobriety, basically the opposite of being a dry drunk. Because when we look at things, we want to honestly try to find out the meaning of what things are. And a good way of doing that is finding out what the opposite of something is. So somebody told me the other day, they asked me, what is atheism? I said, well, what isn't atheism? What isn't atheism? Atheism isn't having a faith and doing this. And then you can kind of figure out, oh, I kind of get it now. So what isn't being a dry drunk? That means having a healthy sobriety, like we said. Emotional regulation and more self-awareness, commitment to our recovery, having a positive outlook and growth. And honestly, being clear-headed and sober is going to help us in that. So we need to be temperate, clear-headed, composed, alert, and abstinent from the things, right? So to get down to the question, okay, and the question was, can somebody be a dry drunk and not have taken any drinks or any alcohol? And the answer is yes, absolutely, surely anybody can be a dry drunk. That's just a term that was coined in the I think it was in the 1970s. The program of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, coined that term as a way of describing people who themselves and their behaviors embodied, still a lot of the same old attributes and things that we had when we were drinking, but now they display those and they're not drinking. So really, when we look at it, we look at people who are crabby, people who are mentally checked out, people who are resentful, people who display some of these unresolved emotional, conflicts and stagnation that we realize that we have in and out of recovery. That's no different than anybody that might be experiencing them as a result of, by way of drug addiction or alcoholism. So I think being a dry drunk can't really describe somebody who hasn't been a drunk before, but we got to find a new way of looking at it, right? So if somebody in your life is constantly displaying these things, there's obviously a mental imbalance. There's a lack of support. There's a lack of therapy or counseling and that sort of thing. And so I would say that, yes, the practical description of a dry drunk is not what you would say. It would not relate to somebody who hasn't been drinking, right? Who doesn't have that problems. But a lot of the things that we carry as a result of, by way of our drinking, is unresolved. So when we were drinking, we weren't resolving those things either. And when we got out of our drinking and when we were trying to get better, we sometimes didn't do the right thing either. But as we work a program, and like it says, you constantly try to find, healthier ways to maintain our interpersonal relationships with people and stop projecting blame or holding grudges or resentments or exhibiting, selfishness and that sort of thing, because recovery and life in general, it's not meant to be selfish. We got to be selfish to be selfless sometimes, because we got to take care of our own life and our own recovery in order to help other people. But we can't live like that 24/7, 100 days, 100% of the time, right? We got to look at what other people are going to need too, because a part of recovery, and that's what we say, being a dry drunk is living in sobriety without recovery. Okay, being a dry drunk is living in sobriety without recovery. Okay, you can be sober and you can be away from the people, places, and things that you used to do that really made your life unmanageable. But if you don't work on the things that you were running from while you were drinking, when you stop drinking, those things are just going to follow you around. So that's what I'm talking about. Being a dry drunk and thriving in recovery are two totally different things. And although you may be sober, and a lot of people say, "Hey, I'm sober. I'm a sober guy. I've been sober for 40 years, 30 years, 20 years. Look me, I've been sober." Well, yeah, that might be one thing, but have you changed your behavior since you got sober? Do people like to be around you? Do you exhibit some of the things that people don't want to be around? Because I have a glaring example in my mind of somebody who is a dry drunk, and it's somebody who is just constantly negative, constantly airing out their complaints, their grievances, their this and that. And honestly, you guys, I can be that person. I would never classify myself as a dry drunk, but I can be that person who complains. I can be that person who maybe goes online and shares too much, or gets irritable at times, or frustrated, or angry, or resentful, or I hold a grudge, or something like that. But I show up every week at my therapy session, and I go to meetings, and I work the steps, and I make recovery vlog, and I make my life better as a result of noticing and becoming aware of these things. So if other people are becoming aware of your problem and you're being a dry drunk, then maybe it's time to maybe you take a look at it, because we learned in this program of recovery, and you don't have to be in recovery to work a recovery program. We're all in recovery from something, my friends. So yeah, you may look down on somebody who maybe used drugs or drink for a long, long time, but honestly, you guys, you're no better or no different than anybody else. We're just here having a human experience, trying to live this out one day at a time, and we're trying to raise our family. We're trying to do the next right thing, but some of us need more practice. We need more know-how. We need more knowledge, more wisdom, and with that comes a greater faith in reliance on a power greater than us. Because you know what? Without therapy, without meetings, without counseling, I think a lot of people are wayward, right? They're not headed in the right direction. And I think being a dry drunk is often a result of undiagnosed or untreated issues from our past, whether that be sexual abuse, whether that be physical abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse. A lot of us have been through the religious ringer. We've been through, it's traumatizing, you guys, to be fed lies and then believe those lies and then think that maybe somewhere down the line we're going to be able to better our life as a result of some of these. But when we find out what it means to be competent in recovery and allow other people to work a program through you, I'm telling you guys, it's night and day difference. So to Mary's question about being a dry drunk, absolutely, somebody could absolutely be a dry drunk and not ever have touched alcohol. The most people in this day and age have used alcohol one way or the other. And so when we look at people who are the practical description of a dry drunk, obviously they have to have been a drunk to be a dry drunk, right? So maybe when we look at people that are dry drunks, but they haven't been a drunk, so to speak, let's pick up a different phrase, right? Maybe they are, emotionally dry, or maybe they're, I don't know. I guess I would say, any advice to anybody that has a question about like that, I would say put your due diligence into finding another term that might better describe this person, because we all have mental hurdles to jump through, and we all have emotions, and we all have behaviors and patterns and ways and means that might not be the best. And there is obviously terms that coin these things, right? But I think a lot of people are struggling with, mental illness or mental health care issues, and they don't know how to resolve them, because for one, they're scared, right? Nobody wants to admit that they have a problem. I didn't want to admit that I was an alcoholic. I knew I was an alcoholic, but I did not want to mention it or talk about it or bring it to light or anything. And so when I was down and out, and I took my last pull from that vodka bottle and I threw it in the garbage and the glass broke all over. I have a very vivid memory of that. I was making a choice at that point in time to do that, and I didn't know how detrimental it actually was until I realized that I was an alcoholic. I made that realization. So maybe somebody, Mary, in their life needs to recognize that they're mentally ill, or that they have a mental illness, or an incapability of dealing with something, and that needs tools, that needs help, that needs, we all need help. We all need tools in our toolbox, and we all need to have some sort of safe zone, safe space, if you will. And I used to, in my mind, think, who in the world would ever need a safe zone? That is so, like, liberal or whatever people would say, but society's got everything backwards. I think the strongest people in our society are people who have these things and utilize these things like therapy and counseling and meetings and meditation and mindfulness and EMDR therapy, DBT therapy. I mean, you bring anybody to the table willing to do the work in their own life after having had such trauma and abuse in their life. Kudos and hats off to them people, because it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of work to get to where we are today, to be able to make a video like this and just off the cuff talk about these things, because I've had the experience in my life to therefore now apply to what I think I might know in the future, and that is to help people understand that our emotional stability, our emotional maturity, our emotional and spiritual accountability and everything, it involves being consistent, persistent, and when we persist and when we persevere in the light of adversity or troubles or all that, we're going to get stronger on the other side. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to ramble on, you guys. I really enjoy talking about this stuff. It really is my lane of travel that I like to travel in. And if anybody wants any more information or has some questions about these topics, please let me know, or email me at recoveryrocksmn@yahoo.com. And, throw me an email and we can chat. I'm not looking for spam emails, of course, but, there are people out there with legitimate cares and concerns and reasons to reach out. And if you're looking to maybe maintain a more healthy interpersonal relationship with people, maybe this is the channel for you. Maybe you learn how to express yourself through hobbies and cares and concerns and therapy. And, I've learned to express myself through these videos. And when I watch them back, I'm really, really, really surprised at how much I've been able to learn and grow and excel in the past, even just a couple, 2, 3 years, right? Because I fell into a way now that I really, really like. Like consistently, I've now found my lane of travel, and I think I finally found a place where I can be of most service to other people, because not only am I bettering myself, but I'm also learning so much, because I didn't even really know what a dry drunk was. I kind of knew what it was and I kind of knew what it meant, but now I know, and now we can help other people and working at it and staying at it every single day. So you got to do those things, and you're not going to know how to do those things unless you get in and start working the steps. And the steps, that's just doing the next right thing is the step. That is the program. That is the way, right? The way is to do the next right thing, and when we do that, we'll find that our labor will be very fruitful. So hey, guys, have a great Friday. I hope this answers questions, better explain a little bit. But I think anybody can be a dry drunk without being a drunk. But honestly, that term is kind of coined for people in recovery. It's been or in abstinence or whatever in that recovery area. So I don't know. Maybe we should find another term that coins people that may be suffering from some of these and embodies these behaviors, but maybe doesn't have the experience with alcohol or drugs. So yeah, that was a very, very interesting question. I really liked it. Thanks, Mary. We'll talk to you guys later. And hey, check out my video on DDS. I will put a link in the description or in the comments below. Thanks, guys.